Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we are taking a fascinating and honestly, sometimes shocking dive into the world of extreme employee retaliation. We're going to explore exactly what happens when disgruntled workers decide to take matters into their own hands. But more importantly, we're going to look at how to actually win against a bad boss using a strategy that, won't land you behind bars. We'll be breaking down some wild, real-world data and stories, comparing incredibly destructive paths with highly effective, entirely legal ways to hold your employer accountable. Let's get right into it.
Look, let's be totally honest here. Have you ever dreamed of getting revenge on your boss? It's okay, you can admit it. I think it's safe to say it is a nearly universal, entirely relatable fantasy. When you feel like you've been unfairly dismissed, completely overworked, or just deeply underappreciated, your mind naturally wanders to how you might tip those scales back in your favor. But while most of us just vent to our friends or complain to our family, some workers take this fantasy and turn it into a very harsh, very physical reality. And that leads us to some of the most extreme cases of workplace retaliation on record.
Okay, picture this. $2.7 million. Gone. The story behind that staggering figure plays out literally like a heist movie. In early 2024, a woman in her 40s was dismissed from her contract job at the Cipa 21 winery over in Spain. Well, just 2 days later, at around 3:30 in the morning, she sneaks back into the facility. Wearing a hood to hide her face, she managed to bypass these really complex security mechanisms on massive stainless steel tanks with absolute precision. Within minutes, she opened the valves and just spilled 60,000 liters of premium vintage wine, stuff they often call liquid gold, right onto the floor. It completely wiped out the winery's entire production of their flagship bottle for that year.
Now, if you thought a $2.7 million loss was devastating, try to imagine a bill for $600 million. Yeah, this mind-boggling figure is the estimated total cost of a massive warehouse fire in California in April 2026. A 29-year-old employee named Shamel Abdul Karim worked for a logistics provider that operated this huge warehouse for Kimberly-Clark. He was earning an average of $18 an hour, and he became incredibly frustrated by the massive disparity between his wages and the soaring cost of living. So he decided to take matters into his own hands.
And this next part brilliantly illustrates his mindset at the time. During his night shift, he actually walked through the 1.2 million square foot facility, pulled out a lighter, and ignited pallets of highly flammable paper products. And he didn't just stop there. He literally filmed the arson attack and posted it to Instagram. The caption, "Should have paid us more. There goes your inventory." He was loudly voicing his frustration that corporate executives just weren't paying workers enough to afford basic rent. But just looking impartials at the outcome here, the tragic irony of what he did was completely devastating. The fire was so intense it took 140 firefighters to control it. The entire building collapsed. And because the facility was completely gutted, every single one of his colleagues lost their jobs because there was simply no more work for them to do.
But obviously, acts like this come with severe consequences. Try 4 years. That is the federal prison sentence handed down to Christopher Liu. He was a senior software developer for Eaton Corporation down in Houston. Back in 2018, his company went through a restructuring, and he ended up being demoted. Upset by this corporate demotion, he decided to use his very specialized technical skills to craft a highly specific, totally hidden type of digital revenge. All right, let's look at how he actually pulled this off. He planted what IT professionals call a logic bomb. Basically, it's a malicious script programmed to sit quietly and execute only when very specific conditions are met. Mr. Liu designed this massive kill switch that constantly monitored his own user ID. When the company finally suspended his employment and officially revoked his network access, the malware immediately detected the change. Because his account was no longer enabled, his code automatically triggered. Boom. It created an infinite loop that crashed their global production servers and automatically started deleting the Active Directory profiles of thousands of other employees all over the world. It paralyzed their global operations and caused hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages.
So the true cost of taking the law into your own hands? It is undeniably grim. The winery worker was arrested for burglary and property damage. The warehouse worker faced multiple criminal charges and the very real potential for life in prison. And our IT worker? Well, he left a massive digital trail leading straight to a federal conviction and 4 years behind bars. In every single one of these extreme cases, the workers ultimately ended up hurting themselves and often their innocent coworkers way more than they hurt the actual companies they were so angry at.
But what if I told you there's a better way? A way to actually hit a bad employer where it hurts the most, their bottom line. without risking a prison sentence. Let's totally pivot to a different approach. We are talking about the ultimate retaliation, legal revenge. This right here is an absolute masterclass in holding a bad boss accountable, entirely within the strict bounds of the law. To see exactly how effective this strategy can be, let's look at the story of Deepinder Kaur. She was a casual worker at an Amazon distribution center, employed through an agency called Adecco, and she found herself in a really challenging spot. On May 25th, she disclosed that she was 7 weeks pregnant and provided a medical certificate. It limited her heavy lifting, but clearly stated she was otherwise perfectly fit to work. She worked her light duties on June 1st and 2nd without issue. But then, on June 5th, at 2:04 in the morning, Adecco sends her a text message stating her shifts were being put on hold indefinitely, claiming they couldn't accommodate her restrictions. But instead of destroying property or lashing out, Deepinder took a totally different route. She pushed back via text, and when they ignored her, she went straight to filing an unfair dismissal claim. By October, she had entirely won her case.
Oh man, and the Fair Work Commission absolutely did not hold back. Adecco tried to argue that she hadn't actually been dismissed because technically her profile was still marked as active in their system. But the commission saw right through that immediately. They delivered a stinging rebuke of the employer's HR tactics. They called the dismissal harsh, unjust, and severely lacking in common decency. They even described the company's text message as a mixture of people and culture puffery and lawyerly disclaimers. But honestly, my favorite part? The commission actually ruled that putting her shifts on hold indefinitely essentially meant she was dismissed until the 12th of never. Just brutal.
And here is the victorious, concrete outcome of that legal revenge. Nearly $15,000. The Fair Work Commission didn't just slap their wrists. They ordered Adecco to fully reinstate Deepinder to her former position. They forced them to maintain her continuity of service and made them cough up exactly $14,830.40 in lost back pay and superannuation. Now that is how you effectively strike back at an unfair employer.
Putting them side by side, it is an incredibly stark and powerful contrast. On one side, we have the catastrophic, life-ruining outcomes of acting out in pure anger: arson, hacking, arrests, and federal prison. And on the flip side, the empowering, totally legitimate reality of using the fair work system: successful claims, actual job reinstatement, and serious financial compensation. It is literally night and day.
So you might be wondering, how do everyday people actually navigate this highly complex legal system to get that kind of result? Well, that's exactly where organizations like the Australian Workplace Discrimination Representatives, or AWDR, come in. These guys are 30-year veteran workplace relations specialists. Now, it is really important to note they are not lawyers. Instead, they are specialized representatives who provide powerful advocacy and strategic guidance. They help everyday Australians find their voice and hold their employers totally accountable, all without the super intimidating formal environment of a traditional law firm.
If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, you actually have a powerful toolkit of specific workplace protections at your disposal. Whether you are dealing with unfair dismissal, incredibly toxic workplaces, sexual harassment, general protections disputes, or really heavy allegations of serious misconduct, these are exactly the areas AWDR specializes in. They are available 24/7. And the absolute game changer here? For many cases, like unfair dismissal and sexual harassment, they operate on a no-win, no-fee basis. That makes this kind of smart, legal revenge incredibly accessible to literally everyone.
The way they build a completely foolproof case is through a very clear, highly supportive, step-by-step process. It's like a giant puzzle, and they know exactly how to put it together. First, they actually sit down, listen to your side of the story, and assess the situation honestly. Second, they meticulously gather all the records, the employment contracts, the text messages, all the evidence. Third, they develop a custom, rock-solid strategy just for your specific case. And finally, they seek a resolution. Whether that's through mediation, direct negotiation, or representation at a tribunal, they handle all the heavy lifting so you can just focus on getting what is rightfully yours.
Which brings us to one final absolutely critical question. Will you let an unfair workplace ruin your career, or will you fight back the smart way? As we've clearly seen today, acting out in pure anger really only destroys your own future. But strategically leveraging your legal rights, that literally forces an employer to answer for their actions, and importantly, it pays you exactly what you deserve. So please don't suffer in silence, and definitely do not reach for a lighter or start writing a logic bomb. Use the system, stand up for yourself, and fight back the smart way. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it gave you some powerful, actionable insights into navigating the modern workplace.